Hello, my name is Jerry Hetcher. I'm the product manager for APTARE, and I'm demonstrating a new feature in our upcoming StorageConsole 9 Feature Pack 1, support for the EMC Isilon array in our Capacity Manager module. The first filer we supported in Capacity Manager was NetApp, and then we added the EMC Celera filer, which was renamed EMC VNX file. And then we added the Hitachi NAS filer, the old BlueArc filer. Isilon is our fourth filer to be supported in Capacity Manager. So let's sign on and start the demonstration. Here's our logon screen for StorageConsole 9.1. I'm using one of the portals in our lab here in Campbell, California that we also use for QA. And as we open up StorageConsole 9.1, we come to the welcome screen, and this is all customizable. I'm going to start by showing you some of the reports off the top of the Capacity Manager stack, and I'm going to use our quick search facility, and I'm going to bring up my favorite Capacity Manager report called Array Utilization, if I can spell it right, Utilization Summary. There we go. And this is at the very top of the stack, and it's heterogeneous. So this report was designed to report on all arrays. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use our scope selector and reduce the scope of this report to just Isilon arrays, though what you will see in the report are a bunch of columns that don't necessarily apply to Isilon, but Isilon is included in all of these heterogeneous reports that come out of the box. Because it's heterogeneous, it uses terminology that applies to all arrays, and I'll walk you through this report. It's a tabular report, and there's a single line item for each Isilon cluster. StorageConsole uses the term array or storage array, and for each of the clusters that have been collected from with a valid data collection policy, you'll have a line item here. And because it's heterogeneous, and a lot of our filers also virtualize other storage, we've got this column virtualized by, and in the case of Isilon, it'll always be blank. And then we report on physical capacities, this next category of columns. We've also called this RAID. In the case of Isilon, the customer don't necessarily know the RAID or data protection policy in effect. It's something that's kind of kept under the covers. So what we do report is raw capacity, and we can do that in a variety of increments. It really depends on how you've got the your profile set. In the case of Isilon, the configured RAID will always be 0, and the RAID groups will always be 0 because there aren't any RAID groups. It's only just raw capacity. It's a rather simple and very straightforward data model. And then we go into what's usable from the Isilon array, and that's going to be known as internal capacity. StorageConsole's got this rollover capability that provides you with help text as you roll over the column header. And in the case of Isilon, this is overall capacity available for any of the supported protocols to serve out and store files on. So that's known as internal capacity, and it is net of any overhead. As I mentioned, Isilon doesn't really virtualize anything or virtualize out anything. So that's always going to be 0 for the Isilon array. External capacity is always going to be 0. So the total capacity is basically the internal capacity of the Isilon array. Going over to the far right, you'll see another category of columns for block arrays and how much of the blocks have actually been allocated out to hosts. So in the case of Isilon being a filer, there aren't any block protocols that are served up. So these won't be in, for Isilon, there won't be any values in any of these columns. And total capacity will just be basically the usable capacity of the array. We do have the concept of, under usable, used capacity versus allocated capacity. So Isilon does return that to us, and we do track used versus available, basically. So in the case of this one array, there's a good 5.3 terabytes, and only 15 gigabytes have been used of that storage, and that results in free capacity in the area of about 5.275 terabytes. So that's how that report works. Like all StorageConsole reports, this report is drillable. Let me kind of go over to the far left again. And this is how you traverse through the Capacity Manager reporting stack. Once again, we're at the top of the stack now, and I want to drill down and get more information about Isilon. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to drill down on this cluster, and I'm going to open up the array capacity and utilization report for that specific Isilon cluster. I can also execute the array capacity and utilization report directly from Quick Search or Explorer and report on multiple Isilon arrays down the page, basically listed down the page. This report is very Isilon specific. Each array model that we support has their own version of this array capacity and utilization, and it's designed in terminology used by the array vendor. So you'll see terminology that's very specific to Isilon in this report. And there's 3 columns, and I'll walk you through all 3 columns. For each cluster, we list the name of the cluster as defined by the user when it was installed, the 1FS firmware version. So 1FS is their file system. And then it also includes the last poll date and time stamp and the overall health of the cluster. So a lot of good information there. And then we go into specific absolute counts of the number of nodes that are online and offline, the number of chassis that represent nodes and go into the cluster, the number of total drive bays within the cluster, and then the number of disks that are in those drive bays. And then we'll also enumerate the number of NFS exports, the number of SMB shares or CIF shares, and any Hadoop file systems that are, or I should say, they call them Hadoop racks, that are being served up by the Isilon array, as well as FTP sessions. And so this will kind of give you an idea how the Isilon array has been configured. And then we've got a capacity summary section that basically lists the overall capacity of the Isilon array. That disk capacity is the raw capacity, the 1FS capacity is what's available after overhead, and then we graph out spares as well, and then can report on file system usage. So we take the used file system versus the available file system, and we plot out a nice little graph. In the case of this array, it's so low that you're not seeing the capacity utilization percent. We also keep track of snapshots, whether or not snapshot is enabled on the array, and the amount of snapshot space that's been reserved, and the number of snapshots. And then there's a quick little performance summary here, the number of clients that are defined, the number of those clients that are active, the throughput of the network, and then the throughput of the file system itself, and then the average CPU, and that's a rollover as well. In this case, the Isilon CPUs were utilized on the average of 25%, and this is for the last 24 hours. And then the last section is the license summary section. And like all StorageConsole reports, these are actionable reports. We're now getting down to the very bottom of the Capacity Manager stack, so you're seeing things like the Isilon node report. You drill down on that, and you get the node report. Here's all the attributes associated with nodes. You can do the same thing with disks. So here's a list of all the disks that are populated in that particular cluster. Going further on down, the number of SIF shares, SMB shares is what they're called within Isilon, and all the attributes associated with that. Same thing with Hadoop racks. These are all the attributes associated with Hadoop racks. And FTP file sessions is not drillable. And then snapshots. There's a Isilon snapshot report. Here's a list of the current active snaps and when they were created and the size of those snaps. We also have the last Isilon report I can show you is the licensed features report. So this shows you which features this array were licensed for and if any of them have been expired. So that's what this particular Isilon array has been licensed for. So a lot of good information. The last point I'm going to bring up with you is the Isilon array is a little unique in that it is basically one file system per array, and there aren't any other objects basically used for provisioning storage off of Isilon, and so all we can really show in Capacity Manager is the file system capacity and how much of that file system is used. You'll see that there aren't capacities associated with SMB shares or SIF shares, and there's not capacities associated with NFS mount points either. That's just the way Isilon works. So that's our Isilon array support in StorageConsole Capacity Manager. I hope you found this enlightening, and look for more videos on our upcoming StorageConsole 9 Feature Pack 1.